every day I walk away. It sounds like a spiritual practice, right? We have to do it every day. We have to walk away from those thoughts that no longer serve us, that holds us in captivity. Do y'all know that today is Passion Sunday? Yeah, I didn't know that either. Had to look it up. In keeping a true Lent, Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, called Passion Sunday, the fifth Sunday of Lent, right? The Overcomer. I want to read to you from this. Our talk today is called Overcoming. And so the Overcomer. An overcomer is one who recognizes the truth of his being and is renewing his mind and body and affairs by changing his thoughts from the old mortal beliefs to the new, as he sees them in divine mind. He is one who demonstrates the divine law, not only in surface life, but in innermost consciousness. Spiritual power, mastery, and dominion are attained by the overcomer. He that overcometh, I will give to him to sit down with me in my throne. See, this experience of Lent, these are the 40 days that lead up to the resurrection. This is our time where we are called to overcome. Yes? Well, I don't know what you mean by that, Todd. Well, we're going to get into that, right? We have to overcome our attachment to material consciousness, right? And we've, oddly enough, you would think I had planned this, but we have been talking about overcoming for months now. Right? If we remember, we've talked briefly about Noah, and Noah had to overcome, not only the flood that is going to happen, Noah had to overcome people making fun of him. Remember that? Everybody made fun of Noah because he was building a boat, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Right? He also had to overcome his own fear. Right, and then we had Moses. Moses had to overcome a king who said, okay, kill all the kids, kill all the, and so he had to overcome that. His mother put him in a basket, and he floated down the river, right? Then he had to overcome his own fear later in his life. He had killed someone, and he ran, to another country. He's afraid, and then he's walking around, and he sees a burning bush that says, hey, go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. Right? And he was like, who, me? We've said that before. Have you said that? You've heard that divine voice and you went, who, me? Right? So we have to overcome our fear. We have to overcome the Pharaoh, that which would hold us in bondage. Right? And then later, Moses had to overcome the faithlessness of his followers. Right? Because, he is leading people around the desert and they're going, what have you done? You have led us out here to die. Right? And then we talked about David. David had to overcome the ideas of his father and his brother, so that they were like, well, surely you don't mean David's going to be king, because David's just a shepherd, right? But David, he later he goes and he joins the army, and he's standing there, and this whole army comes forward, and they're not scared of the army, but then the giant walks out. Remember Goliath? And David had to overcome his fear, and he overcomes Goliath. So we have all of this overcoming that is. Do you remember this? I keep saying this. This entire story, all of these characters live in us. Right? Because we want to think that overcoming is just about Jesus, because there are time and again in scriptures where we learn about Jesus overcoming separation. Walking on water, holding people up into the truth of their being so they're healed of their blindness. Right, and sometimes we get lost in this idea that we're supposed to do what Jesus did, right? And I want to know which one of you has walked up to a blind person to spit in their eye. Right? It's because we can't look at it literally. We have to look at the metaphysics behind what we are being asked to do. Right? But we have to look at this through our own lens. right? In getting prepared for our Tuesday night group on Marcus Borg's book, Reading the Bible Again for the First Time, Borg talks about how the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, how they refer constantly to the prophets in Hebrew Scripture, right? But he says, but they kind of cherry pick what they're going to talk about, and they use it in a way that doesn't completely agree with how the prophets were talking about it, because the authors of Matthew, Mark, and Luke were trying to prove that Jesus is the Messiah. Okay? Come to class and learn about it. If you haven't been participating and that sparks your interest, come and join us. But see, here, that made me think, wow, I pick certain scriptures and use those. Maybe I'm a prophet. I'm glad y'all laugh at that. So today we're going to talk about overcoming, and we're going to look at the story, the narrative around one of the prophets. Now, I'm not going to pull the Bible out today and read scripture to you, but I want you to know that we're going to look at the story of King Ahab. People remember King Ahab? Susie back there is, and she's nodding her head, and Kath. Some of you do. So King Ahab, he was the king of the Israelites, right? And he marries Jezebel. People remember Jezebel. If you don't remember her, you know the name, right? Everybody knows the name of Jezebel because it's used as a derogatory term sometimes, right? Well, Jezebel is the daughter of Ethbaal. I'm probably not saying that right. But he was the king of the Sidonians, right? And they worshipped the god Baal. So when the king marries someone that's of a different religion, he's supposed to build her a temple. So he starts building temples in Israel for Baal, right? And Jezebel does not like Jehovah, the God of the Israelites. And so she starts having the prophets of Jehovah killed, right? She starts having people killed. And then there is the governor, the butler, maybe, the overseer of the household of King Ahab is Obadiah. And Obadiah does not agree with this because he is fearful of Jehovah. So he hides 100 prophets in caves and he feeds them bread and water, right? And while he's out seeing to the people that he's hidden, he runs into Elijah. Elijah is our prophet that we're talking about today. And Elijah tells Obadiah, go and tell Ahab to come and meet me. So, they have a little argument. That happens. And so he tells Ahab, bring all of the prophets of Baal to Mount Carmel, and we will meet at Mount Carmel. So this is what happens. So there are 450 prophets of Baal that show up, and there is Elijah, who at this point I think is the last prophet living because everyone else has gotten killed. And so he tells the Israelites, right, because the Israelites have started praying to Baal instead of to Jehovah. And so he says, okay, you've got to choose between Jehovah and Baal. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring 2 bulls in here. And we're going to take the bulls and we're going to prepare them for sacrifice, right? And so the prophets of Baal are going to call on the name of their God to start the fire. And I'm going to call on the name of Jehovah to start the fire on my bull, right? And whoever starts the fire is the real and true God. So this happens, and so they prepare the bulls, and Elijah prepares his, and then he builds an altar, that place in us where we know our divinity. He builds an altar, and he places 12 stones. Have y'all heard that number 12 around here? Right? The 12 stones that represent the 12 powers. Right, and then he digs a trench around the altar, and then he tells the Israelites, come and dump water on the firewood and on the bull, fill the trench with water. And so he has them come and dump water on it 3 times. Oh, there's another one of our metaphysical numbers, 3. So they do this, and the prophets of Baal, they call out to Baal and nothing happens, and they call out to Baal and nothing happens. They start cutting themselves to make a blood offering. They call out, nothing happens. They're upset. And then Elijah calls on Jehovah, the Lord his God, and fire consumes his offering. Completely consumes his offering. And so he has proven that Jehovah is the one true God. Right, but then he was so enthusiastic that he became violent and destructive. And he ordered the Israelites to kill all of the prophets of Baal. It's kind of crazy, huh? Now we have to look a little bit at what do these characters mean? What does all this mean, right? Because we have to understand that King Ahab, represents the error states of our consciousness that are based in false intellectual consciousness. How many times have we placed our faith in that which we believe is intellectually true, only to know that it's not spiritually the truth? Right? And which wins out? It is spiritual truth is the truth no matter what, because it happens in spirit, right? We know that God is unlimited good, unchanging good, unconditional love. So the truth in spirit never changes. What doesn't change here in this manifest realm? Everything changes. Everything changes. And so when we have that error state of consciousness, right, we can sometimes get married to unbridled passion of sense consciousness. Right? We become obsessed with that which is here in the sense world, that which is in this relative manifest world, that which is changeable, right? That is the Ahab of our consciousness that is joining together with the Jezebel of our consciousness. Because they live inside of us. Right, but luckily, in addition to Ahab and Jezebel, we also have Elijah, right? We have the spiritual I am of our consciousness, right? The spiritual I am of our consciousness, and that is not quite pure yet, because we haven't gotten to the resurrection. We haven't arrived to that place where we know ourselves as the Christ of our being. But Elijah still lives within us. We still live from this potential, but we have to be careful, right? Because when we get to Mount Carmel, right, where that represents the I am that is in realization of its unfettered power. See, when you know that I am has called you, you are powerful beyond measure. Yes? And so we have to be careful when we get to that point, because we can get distracted. We can have such enthusiasm that we become violent and destructive. Yes? Right? And that's when we lose sight. And even though we know that we act out of our Jezebel consciousness, the Jezebel side of our character. So that's why we have to walk away every day. Every day I walk away from those thoughts that would hold me in bondage. I walk away from those thoughts that would have me become violent and destructive. Right? See, we can't begin to heal until we acknowledge that this lives in us. Right? See, Obadiah, the governor, the one that is hiding the prophets, he represents the higher thoughts of man that serve and worship through the indwelling Christ. See, we can live from our Obadiah, but we are still limited. So we have to move forward. We have to step forward and not only be obedient to our spiritual ideas, but we have to live from our spiritual ideas. Right? Because when we don't do that, when we become obsessed with this material world, with our sense consciousness, right? Our five senses, and we are overwhelmed with the desire for pleasure and good food and a beautiful house and things, and we don't value the relationship that we have with each other and with ourselves and with the Christ of our being, right? Then we are creating and loving a concept of God that is less than universal mind. We are loving the God of Baal and not Jehovah. I did that on purpose. We have to walk away every day from error thoughts. Error thoughts about ourselves. And we have to walk away from some error thoughts about other people, right? Because this relative manifest experience can get messy sometimes, can't it? I read an article this week. It was from a couple years ago. It's called The Confessions of Marcus Hutchins. Anybody know who Marcus Hutchins was? It's too bad. We should really know who Marcus Hutchins is, because he was a computer hacker. Okay? And when he was a young teenager, like 13 or 14, he wrote some malware that was called Cronus, that would steal your banking information, and he helped steal lots and lots of money from banks. Right? But then he later became a cybersecurity genius. Right? And most of us don't know this, but in 2017, a malware started just infecting the entire world. It was called WannaCry. Anybody remember WannaCry? I know some medical professionals will remember it, because WannaCry took out the entire medical establishment in the United Kingdom. Right? It disabled computers one at a time, and you would get a screen that said you have to pay $300 to unlock your computer. And it was spreading like wildfire. And he studied it, and he thought he had found, this is going to help me find out who did it. But he found some code in this malware that was pointing to a URL, a web address. And that web address wasn't registered to anyone, and he registered it. And as soon as he registered it, and it had a live domain, it stopped infecting computers. He found the kill switch. Right? So he is a celebrated hero because he's this cybersecurity genius. And then one day he got arrested by the FBI because when he was 13, he wrote some malware called Cronus that would steal everyone's banking information. So is he a good guy or is he a bad guy? And does the timeline matter? Does it matter? Because I think it matters. The judge thought it mattered because the judge just kind of let him off. Right? When I was in 10th grade, I had to memorize a soliloquy from Julius Caesar. And this line comes back to me every once in a while. The evil men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones. So let it be with noble Caesar. See, we can sometimes turn around and completely disavow a person, a place, an institution because we don't like something that they have done. And throw out all the good that has ever happened. I've been guilty of that. Have you been guilty of that? It happens. It happens. And I gathered with some friends last night, and someone asked me, oddly enough, about the Oscar incident. Everybody knows about the Oscar incident? No. You also know you have to sit through a theater story today. Right? Because, I have a degree in theater, and there is a superstition in the theater industry, right? That you don't say the name of the Scottish play backstage. or from the stage unless you're performing the Scottish play. And if you don't know what the Scottish play is, come and see me afterwards, because I'm not going to say it, or something bad could happen. But apparently, and I was not watching the Oscars, but I'm told that Chris Rock mentioned the Scottish play from the stage, and minutes later he said something bad about Jada Pinkett Smith, and a gentleman with the same initials as William Shakespeare, who wrote the Scottish play, jumped up on stage and slapped him. And then, backstage, Denzel Washington, who plays the title character in the Scottish play, went and was like, hey, Will, let's chat, brother, right? It's really easy to go down the rabbit hole in any of these narratives that we talk about. Right? But we have the opportunity to always overcome. Right? Overcoming is about choosing inner peace. And we have to choose our inner peace over and over and over again. That is overcoming. Right? Do I have an opinion on what happened at the Oscars? Wish it hadn't happened. Do I have an opinion on who overcame in the Duke and Carolina game last night? Not really. Yeah, I haven't pledged allegiance to either one, right? I even wore a shirt that has multiple blues in it today, so you wouldn't know. See, the truth is that everything that's out there, that we are seeing out there, that triggers us out there, lives inside of us. So if I was bothered by what Chris did, then I have bullied people in my life, and I am afraid that I might do it again. If I am triggered by what Will Smith decided to do instead of choosing peace, then I am afraid that I might slap someone. Right? And sometimes when I watch what happens in Congress, I kind of wish I could go and slap someone, honestly. Right? That there is always, this idea that what they did, but what anybody doesn't bother us unless it triggers us in some way, because it lives in us. It lives in our consciousness. And so we get to heal that. We get to look at that and own that and forgive it. See, that's overcoming. Choosing peace is forgiving. So we are down into this final stretch of looking at the Easter narrative and learning what we can learn from this story as we look through it with our lens. What's it going to take for you to overcome? What will it take for you this week to walk away from thoughts that no longer serve you, that which would hold you in bondage? What will it take this week for you to prioritize your inner peace? And are you willing to do that? It's a spiritual practice. It's a spiritual practice because if you just come on Sundays, it's a hobby. Every day. I love y'all, including the people that wrote the checks that I just got wet when I spilled my water. Be well. I love you.
This is a beautiful song by Daniel Nahmod, and it's called Everything New. Bring it on, everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. I'm through crying and I'm through waiting. I'm through hoping against all hope. I'm through longing for something gone that will never return. I think I finally learned, so bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. And I'm through grieving, and I'm through dreaming that the life I had is ever coming back. No more wishing for someone else's stuff that will never be mine. Oh, I think it's time, so bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. No, I know it's gonna be everything new. No, not surviving many times before. Broken hearts and slammed doors. It'll be alright, yes, once more, just as I did back then. And I'm gonna rise again, so bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything